Reopening Past Tax Assessments, a primer. In India, the Income Tax Department has the authority to reassess income tax returns that have already been filed. This process, known as reassessment, allows tax authorities to scrutinize past filings for potential errors, omissions, or underreporting of income. However, this power of reassessment is not unlimited. The Income Tax Department is bound by strict time limits prescribed by law, within which they must issue reassessment notices. These time limits ensure fairness and provide taxpayers with a degree of certainty regarding their tax liabilities. For instance, if the tax authorities believe that a taxpayer has significantly underreported their income, they might issue a notice for reassessment. The time limit for issuing such a notice typically ranges from 1 to 6 years from the end of the relevant assessment year, depending on the nature of the income and the reasons for reassessment. These time limits are crucial because they prevent the arbitrary reopening of past tax assessments and provide taxpayers with a sense of finality. The pandemic's grip on tax administration. The outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic in early 2020 brought unprecedented challenges to various sectors globally, and tax administration was no exception. Lockdowns, restrictions on movement, and health concerns severely disrupted the normal functioning of tax departments across the world. India's Income Tax Department, responsible for collecting a significant portion of the government's revenue, was also significantly impacted by the pandemic's effects. Tax officials faced numerous obstacles in carrying out their duties, including limited access to physical offices, reduced workforce capacity, and disruptions to communication channels. These disruptions had a cascading effect on various tax-related processes, including the issuance of notices, processing of returns, and completion of assessments. Recognizing the extraordinary circumstances, the Indian government introduced several measures to alleviate the burden on taxpayers and provide relief to tax authorities grappling with the pandemic's impact. TOLA, a lifeline for tax authorities. Among the measures taken by the government, the Taxation and Other Laws, Relaxation of Certain Provisions Ordinance, 2020, popularly known as TOLA, emerged as a crucial piece of legislation. TOLA aimed to provide much-needed relief to taxpayers and tax authorities alike by extending various timelines stipulated under tax laws. One of the key provisions of TOLA was the extension of time limits for issuing notices under the Income Tax Act 1961. This extension was deemed essential because the pandemic-induced disruptions had severely hampered the ability of the tax department to issue notices within the original timeframes. TOLA, therefore, provided a lifeline to tax authorities, allowing them to preserve their right to reopen past assessments that might have otherwise been time-barred due to the extraordinary circumstances. The extension granted under TOLA was not arbitrary but was carefully calculated to compensate for the time lost due to the pandemic. Supreme Court weighs in upholding TOLA's extension. The validity of TOLA's provisions, particularly the extension of time limits for issuing reassessment notices, was challenged in various courts across India. The matter eventually reached the Supreme Court, the highest judicial authority in the country. The Supreme Court, in a landmark judgment, upheld the validity of TOLA's provisions, including the extension of time limits for issuing reassessment notices. The court recognized the extraordinary challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic and acknowledged the need for legislative intervention to address the disruptions caused to tax administration. The court reasoned that the extension of time limits under TOLA was a reasonable and proportionate response to the unprecedented circumstances. The court emphasized that the extension was not intended to give the tax department an unfair advantage, but to ensure that the rights of the tax department were not unjustly prejudiced due to the pandemic. Section 5. Decoding the Judgment Key Takeaways. The Supreme Court's judgment upholding TOLA's extension of time limits for issuing reassessment notices has significant implications for both taxpayers and tax professionals. Here are the key takeaways. Extended time limits. The judgment confirms that the time limits for issuing reassessment notices stand extended as per TOLA's provisions. Taxpayers must be aware of these extended deadlines as the tax department can still issue notices within these extended timeframes. Justification for extension. The Supreme Court's reasoning underscores the exceptional nature of the COVID-19 pandemic and its impact on tax administration. The judgment clarifies that the extension of time limits was a justified response to the extraordinary circumstances. Impact on taxpayers. Taxpayers need to be prepared for potential reassessment notices even beyond the original time limits. It is crucial to maintain proper documentation and records to substantiate income declarations and tax payments made in earlier years. Section 6. Navigating the new landscape. Implications for taxpayers and professionals. The Supreme Court's judgment has reshaped the landscape of income tax reassessments in India. Taxpayers and tax professionals need to adapt to these changes and understand their implications. For taxpayers, it is crucial to be vigilant and proactive in maintaining accurate tax records. Taxpayers should review their past filings and ensure that they have adequate documentation to support their income declarations and tax payments. This proactive approach can help taxpayers avoid potential disputes or challenges during reassessment proceedings. Tax professionals, including chartered accountants and tax lawyers, play a vital role in guiding taxpayers through the complexities of tax laws and regulations. They need to stay abreast of the latest judicial pronouncements, including the Supreme Court's judgment on TOLA. Section 7. Adapting to extraordinary times, a testament to legal flexibility. The Supreme Court's judgment upholding TOLA's extension of time limits for issuing reassessment notices reflects the Indian legal system's ability to adapt to extraordinary times. The judgment recognizes that unforeseen circumstances may necessitate adjustments to legal frameworks to ensure fairness and justice. The COVID-19 pandemic presented unprecedented challenges to various sectors, and tax administration was no exception. The Indian government's response, through legislative measures like TOLA and the Supreme Court's subsequent upholding of these measures, demonstrate a balanced approach to addressing the pandemic's impact. This approach seeks to protect the interests of both the tax department and taxpayers, ensuring the smooth functioning of the tax system while acknowledging the extraordinary difficulties posed by the pandemic. Section 8. Conclusion. In conclusion, the Supreme Court's decision to uphold TOLA's extension of time limits for issuing reassessment notices is a significant development in Indian tax law. The judgment underscores the exceptional challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic and the need for legal flexibility in responding to such extraordinary circumstances. Taxpayers and tax professionals must understand the implications of this judgment and adapt their strategies accordingly. This landmark judgment serves as a reminder of the evolving nature of tax laws and the importance of staying informed about changes that may impact tax liabilities.